concerning the New Zealand leaving. They've not disclosed that to Pakistan, to the Pakistan board. So if you need to be transparent. You need to be transparent about these things. Otherwise, people will whisper that simply the case is that people don't fancy going to places like Pakistan, and therefore they'll bail out at the first given opportunity.
Right, so we have Mark Butcher just to dissect what's happened in the last couple of days with, of course, what's going on in Pakistan, New Zealand pulling out, and then ECB coming out with the press release saying that they've pulled out as well from their toes to postpone it to 2022. Let me get that right. Mark, thanks for your time. What did you make of this whole news breaking in the last 48 hours?
Well, I mean, it was reasonably inevitable once New Zealand had decided to call off their tour that England would follow suit. I suppose that the intrigue around it is the reasons as to why. They weren't able to state security reasons for not touring because the High Commission, the private security company, and of course Pakistan itself hadn't changed the advice as far as England touring was concerned. So there was no extra security threat there for them. In the ECB statement, they said that it was player fatigue and mental health and well-being that was being looked after. England, the men's team were only due to be there for 4 days, and it was as much a thank you to Pakistan for coming over and rescuing the English summer in 2019 as it was for any other reason. And I think England should have been able to find 15 players who wanted to tour and fulfill that engagement, the 2 T20 games. Everyone has been put in a very difficult situation. Pakistan, of course, helped out the ECB over the course of the last 2 summers, coming over and touring here when COVID was absolutely rampant and rife. The feeling is here in the UK, and my feeling is that England should have fulfilled that commitment in the run up to the World T20. The last thing in the statement that was issued from the ECB, it said it was an extraordinary paragraph, really, that touring and playing those two T20 games in Pakistan was not ideal preparation for the World T20. Well, I mean, if playing 20 matches in subcontinental conditions against subcontinental opposition is not good preparation for a World T20 in the UAE, then I don't know what is. So, you make your own mind up.
Yeah, it's head scratching that. But the PCB would say that, South Africa came and nothing happened. They had the PSL with plenty of international players. I think a couple of other nations toured as well. So do you think that this perhaps is a little tough to take for PCB at the moment, given the fact that there was no real scare, even though that safety is paramount for these players?
No, it's very, very tough for them to take. I'm kind of on Pakistan's side on this. I can't see, unless there's information that that I'm not aware of, and if there is, then that should be released. That should be released in order to help everybody figure out how to solve the problems. I don't see a good enough reason as to why England weren't able to send a team. It didn't have to be the team, but it should have been enough to send a team to go and play that 2-match series. The whole thing stinks, really, in terms of, depends on where you are on the pecking order as to who decides to play where. India leave England leave South Africa, England don't travel to Pakistan, Australia don't go to Bangladesh. The bigger teams have a responsibility to the rest to make sure that the game is continued in all corners of the globe as far as cricket is concerned. And at the moment, a lot of the bigger teams are not fulfilling their responsibilities, whilst they're expecting the likes of Pakistan, South Africa, West Indies to go and help them when they need it. And that's just not right.
Yeah, I was going to come to what their relationship with certain boards would be. I mean, with the PCB, I'm guessing right now it's kind of bruised after this particular tour being aborted. I know they're saying it's postponed to August maybe next year, but let's wait and watch on that. But also with the whole India series kind of going that way, if the IPL wasn't around, do you think the ECB would have had a fair chance in completing the series? Do you think they were just bullied by the BCCI, even with that whole mention of forfeit and simply covering up the words over there. Does that really show ECB's stance right now?
No, I don't know about that. I mean, one thing I'll say as far as the players are concerned, with the IPL, particularly the Indian players, funnily enough, is that, you know, those guys, they're not short of a rupee or two. You know, these guys don't need the money to play in the IPL. Their reasons for bailing out of England would have been pretty much based around the fact that they've been on the road for over a year and were just kind of sick and tired of it. And COVID had appeared in the camp again, and they decided that there was time to go. Yes, the IPL being close would have been a factor, but it wasn't the factor. You know, it's very complicated in all of these things. You know, New Zealand had their reasons for leaving Pakistan, but Pakistan knew that once New Zealand had made that call, then there would be a domino effect and other teams wouldn't come. You know, Australia is supposed to be going there later on in the year. Will they show now? You know, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But also, you know, whatever the security concerns were concerning the New Zealand leaving, they've not disclosed that to Pakistan, to the Pakistan board. You know, so if you need to be transparent. You need to be transparent about these things. Otherwise, people will whisper that simply the case is that people don't fancy going to places like Pakistan, and therefore they'll bail out at the first given opportunity.
Yeah, only time will tell, of course, how that all unravels in due time. But we appreciate your time for talking about such a matter like this.